All right, I'm excited to have a discussion today with Natalie Brunell, one of in my opinion, better and best thought leaders in the Bitcoin industry. She has a wonderful background of just education, interviewing some of the smartest minds, and what I personally think is just distilling complex information into easy to understand ways so that people can walk away confidently understanding Bitcoin or whatever topics you may be covering that day. So, Natalie, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, so today we had planned to talk a little bit about Bitcoin, some of the regulation that's been going on, its impacts on the industry, and what it means to build on Bitcoin versus other chains. So, I'll go ahead and dive right in, but I wanted to kick off and discuss the Genius Act. We've seen a lot of just big headlines ever since the Genius Act has been passed, but could you maybe distill that for the audience and help them understand?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of big legislative developments ever since the Trump administration came into office, and they've really been prioritizing digital assets, which is great for our industry. And so this year they did pass the Genius Act, and it was signed into law. And this is essentially the very first U.S. stablecoin law. And it's very important because I think the US government prioritized this in order to really extend dollar dominance. So, what is the Genius Act exactly? Well, it basically it says by law that stablecoins have to hold stable value. And how are they going to do that? Well, the US is now going to regulate them, and they have to be 100% backed by quote unquote safe assets, right? Because safe, the dollar. So they have to be backed by cash or short term treasuries. And it also dictates who can issue these stable coins. And the issuers have to disclose their reserves. I believe it's monthly. They can't suggest that they're backed by the US government. Although, if you think about it, they're now highly regulated and they have to hold treasuries, and the treasuries are backstopped by the government. There's other little things like in bankruptcy, for example, stablecoin holders get paid first because the reserves are off limits to other creditors, and issuers have to have all sorts of like anti-fraud and sanction controls in place. This is highly regulated. They also have to be able to like freeze or even burn stable coins if the law requires it. So some people have compared the Genius Act to sort of like a CBDC. That's why some of the congressmen voted against it. But really, for businesses, this means that stablecoins are no longer the Wild West. And if customers or partners use them, there are now guardrails. And I think that makes trusting them very easy.
Good. And some of this regulatory clarity has clearly encouraged a lot of businesses to take action. We've seen, and I'm sure there's many more, Robinhood, Stripe, and many others. They're creating their own chains as well as their own stablecoins, taking advantage of distribution. But there's also been, beyond just the Genius Act, the Clarity Act, defining the specific roles of these different government institutions. Could you give some color in regards to what the Clarity Act is doing?
Yeah, and just to put a bow on, you said most people are probably familiar with Tether, which is like the biggest stablecoin issuer. I think they have like 70% of the global market, and they just plucked former executive director of digital assets for the Trump administration, Bo Hines, to serve as their strategic advisor. So it's really interesting to see that even the offshore, even these like massive entities like Tether that were offshore, they are coming into compliance with US law because they know that this is the dominant market, and if they want to remain the dominant player around the world, they're going to have to, play by the US rules. But you mentioned the Clarity Act. That one really defines essentially which agency regulates what. So, as you've probably guessed, the SEC takes securities and the CFTC takes digital commodities like Bitcoin. It also creates new registration categories like digital commodity exchanges, brokers, dealers. It puts strict rules around them. They're going to have to, monitor trading. There's like custody components to these rules, anti-fraud again. And this has already passed the House, and I think it's heading to the Senate yet, but it's pretty much a done deal, in my opinion. What it means for businesses, I think it's just no more second guessing like which regulator calls the shots. And you can basically plan to align your operations, compliance, and disclosures based on how each digital asset functions and which regulator it falls under.
All right, great. And one of the big things too, I know there's been a lot of excitement about is the Bitcoin strategic reserve. Um, we don't necessarily have any additional Bitcoin yet, but there's been a lot of back and forth. What it seems like the Bitcoin community has felt on X, and Scott Bessent had some comments. I'd love to hear how you just took all of this in this last week and a half. What do you think this means for the market?
Oh, it was really, really fascinating to see Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent sort of do a walk back. I wonder what prompted the tweet that he sent after kind of going viral on that Fox Business interview with Maria Bartiromo, where he essentially said that the US is not going to be buying Bitcoin, that we have this, strategic Bitcoin reserve that's made up of Bitcoin that's already been confiscated. But he said on TV that we're not going to be buying. And then he reversed course and went on Twitter and said that we're going to look at budget neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin. So a lot of Bitcoiners were like, what happened there? Some people thought it's why the price took a pretty drastic turn after hitting an all-time high of 124,000. But let's just kind of like zoom out and cover the strategic Bitcoin reserve because the US, this was one of the executive orders. This was super exciting for Bitcoiners to see earlier this year. And it officially created a reserve specifically of Bitcoin, right? It's separate from the digital asset stockpile of other crypto that the government can sell. This is establishing a reserve of Bitcoin that the government holds from seized funds, and they pledged not to sell it. So agencies are supposed to be reporting how much Bitcoin they're holding. And the Treasury Secretary also created some confusion because he said that the US has somewhere around 15 to $20 billion worth of Bitcoin. But according to firms like Arkham Intelligence that have put out estimates of the US is supposed to have somewhere around 200,000 Bitcoin. So the 15 to 20 billion is actually a little on the low end. So another question is like, have we been selling? And if so, why? But if we're going to talk about the positive aspects of this, this is really huge. Like for the US, I didn't expect this to happen in this administration, but the US is recognizing Bitcoin as a reserve asset. It just signals legitimacy, and it does influence, I think, how businesses and governments think about Bitcoin as a treasury tool. And overall, it's really positive, but there is still some confusion. Like, how much does the government hold, and when will they be acquiring more, and how?
Yeah, very cool. So, with a lot of these advancements that we're getting from these executive orders, market clarity, the Genius Act, it sounds like we've got a whole brand new technology, a new industry that's frankly, even for those of us in it, it can be hard to grok at times, but we got some rules we can live within. So maybe you could break down how these new rules apply to this brand new industry and what to expect, let's just say, maybe over the next 2 years for businesses.
Yeah, so I really see this as a lot of the same rules. If you've been running a business that is compliant, it's just new rails. It is bringing business into the 21st century with technologies that essentially move 24/7 and can reach across borders without the friction that exists in the current system. But again, it's like pretty much the same rules. Businesses have to verify their customers and their partners. They have to keep records. It's largely more risk based. You have to assess your risk and have proper risk management. It's not risk free, and companies will need to document their policies. They do have to monitor activity. I know this is very controversial in the Bitcoin space, right? And the hardcore Bitcoiners, they want no KYC. And I totally get the ethos behind that. But to be compliant, that's what companies really have to do. And, monitor activity, escalate issues. And that means everything from, starting at onboarding, you collect the basics, know your customer, know your business, you screen, you check for sanctioned regions or suspicious actors, you flag any anomalies that you see, you keep a paper trail. So you show, that you're working with logs, and you're really just able to track everything that you're doing in case a problem comes up. And you really establish clear roles. Who's responsible for those reviews? Who's responsible for approvals and any responses to incidents that come up?
Wonderful. Now, one of the most eye-opening quotes that I've heard this year from someone we were on the phone with here at Voltage was a gentleman said, "There's only two untarnished assets in all of crypto. There's Bitcoin and there's stablecoins." And whenever you look at Tether, who's market dominant, you mentioned that I believe they have 70%. I even saw the stat like something like 60% of all crypto fees in the entire market come from Tether usage. They're clearly crushing it, for lack of a better word. And then we've got Bitcoin. And as you shared earlier, Bitcoin is the one asset the government is going to hold. They are not going to sell. They're going to sell
Mhm.
these other assets. And as it relates to Tether, in January, they shared, hey, we are bringing our stablecoin to the Lightning Network. Now, why are we
Mhm.
doing this? And Paulo said, these other chains, they have a global shared state, meaning you as a node or an economic actor have to know what every other single person's doing. And the way I like to put that is imagine if you as a human being had to make a decision while knowing what everyone in the world was doing. That sounds a bit overwhelming. And
Mhm.
that's why they want to bring Tether to the Lightning Network. This peer-to-peer architecture is far more lightweight. You only need to know what your peers are doing. So to dive in, beyond some of these points we've heard others say, I'd love for you to break down for listeners like why Bitcoin versus other chains, what makes Bitcoin valuable from your perspective, and why is it becoming, either the money of the internet or why is it continuing to be dominant in the world of all these tokens?
Yeah, it's so fascinating just to see the evolution, and everyone is really getting excited about digital assets in general. But there's a reason that I have remained Bitcoin focused and Bitcoin only. And I'm so excited about companies that are looking to build on top of Bitcoin, these layer twos, even layer threes. Because it really is the bedrock. Like what makes Bitcoin so special and so different? It really is the most secure and decentralized protocol. It has a fixed supply that is immune to change, immune to manipulation. There is no company in charge. It is the most secure, essentially battle tested base layer that we've ever had. It essentially is under attack every single day, and it's the most resilient blockchain because it has all of this energy backing it. I know sometimes it's a little bit, enigmatic how Michael Saylor can describe things, where he says a wall of encrypted energy, and that might not sound very like it makes a lot of sense to the layperson, but that's what it truly is. I mean, it essentially has just a massive amount of energy backing it to the point that you can't undo the past blocks in order to be able to hack it. And so it has come to this level of dominance that truly carries so much value, and it's slow and changes in such a it's so difficult to change by design, which is what makes it really reliable. And that can't be said for a lot of the other blockchains out there. And look, I believe in a free market. So wherever you want to put your money, that is your business. And I wish you all the best. I just have concerns about some of the other blockchains because they aren't as decentralized, and they have replaced the energy component that comes with proof of work that does add to, making the base layer slower, right? You have to wait for those 10-minute blocks and for the whole entire network to come into consensus. But the reason is because you have that energy, which no one can cheat and create out of thin air. And a lot of the other protocols have replaced that with proof of stake, which it injects more governance and centralization, especially as you zoom out over time. And that is a risk to me. So, of course, there are going to be more companies that want to build stable coins on top of Bitcoin because it is the bedrock. It is the granite. It is like that foundation that is absolutely secure and that you can build on for the next 100 years. Whereas, like, what is the future of some of these blockchains? Would you put your money there for the next 100 years if you couldn't touch it? I mean, I think a lot of people would say they might have some concerns. And again, Bitcoin will build in layers. It will scale in layers. So the base layer, I think, decades down the road, it won't be used as much by like the everyday person as it is today, probably because the fees will be much higher at that point, and it will be more for like final settlement of massive transactions, and it will be for the security of the whole network. Whereas a lot more people will be interacting on layer two, which is Lightning, which gives you that speed and the low fees and more for everyday payments, as I think Bitcoin ascends to take its place as more of a medium of exchange over time. And then I think there will be a level three where like apps and services are live, and we have more tools that come out over time as more people build on Bitcoin in general.
Yeah, those are good points, and I see a lot of debate about what's going to be the winning layer two, I'm not a developer by any means, and I know you are not either. But the thing that I've seen taken away just from my perspective is a lot of these folks say like Lightning is the communication layer, or it's the payment rail that allows Bitcoin to flow in and out of these other chains. So I do kind of like that because this idea that there are layers, I feel like it might have been challenging to grok when there was just layer one. But now that we see Lightning and these other layer twos or layer threes, and they're all really coherently, it seems, working together, it makes it a bit more clear, and that's got to be a good signal to the market. I don't know if you have anything to share with that, but that was just a passing thought after you shared what you had mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, and I think that more businesses really just need to experiment because they'll find out how Lightning makes Bitcoin even easier. And I think sometimes people view some of these like amazing developments as super technical, but if you take the time to really learn about it, I mean, Lightning at the end of the day, it's like opening up a bar tab. It's not any different, right? You open up a channel, it's like opening up a bar tab. You can run your tab, you can send payments instantly, and when you're done, you can close the tab and settle on the Bitcoin network. And what we need is more people willing to do that, to open up their channels. This is a place where some companies are looking at to earn yield potentially and to make their Bitcoin a little bit more productive, but add to the overall liquidity of the Lightning Network, which we really need. We don't have enough liquidity on the Lightning Network, especially as Bitcoin scales, but that'll change as businesses just like take the time to just experiment with these types of technologies. And again, you're building on top of the bedrock layer, the best blockchain, the most secure, the most decentralized.
Yeah, you're spot on there. Another interesting thing, and we don't have to go too deep down this rabbit hole because it is very early stage, but stablecoins coming to Lightning, a big hot topic this year.
Mhm.
Taproot assets, the update to Lightning that just enables other assets or data to be on top of Lightning. It creates a multi-currency network. And I know right now with the incentive to take advantage of corporate distribution and these large brands to launch their own chain and quickly launch their own stable and to kind of vertically integrate all of that into one. We did see that with the internet. Before the internet, there were intranets that did not survive. Do you think some of these chains may face the same outcome? How do you foresee maybe this happening? Like, do you believe many stables will transfer and come on top of Lightning? Because you raised two really good points. There's I believe you said the governance risk and then the issuer risk. And the more we add like all of these complex layers and like bridging and things, it is
Mhm.
subject to human error or protocol error. And the fact that you can bring, multiple technologies or assets over one chain seems like it reduces some risk. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had a crystal ball and I had to guess which chains would be in existence in the next, I wouldn't be able to tell you. If you look back even just over the last 5 to 10 years, at the top 10 dominant protocols, every single year they change except for maybe a few, obviously Bitcoin always being at the top of that list.
Yeah.
And the others have, fared well for a moment in time and then crashed. And that's really my worry. I mean, that's why like I totally get like people saying that we should invest in whatever we want. Again, free market, but I worry about the risk. I worry that some people look at the space without doing enough homework at the blockchain trilemma, if you will, which Jeff Booth writes about. I highly recommend everyone take a look at his article because people, I think, get really excited about something, especially if it benefits their investment, but they don't take the time to
Mm.
really look at, is it a technically economically sound asset for the long run? Like, how is this going to build into the future? How does consensus work? How does governance work? What do I have at stake, really? And I just think that there's nothing that gives me the type of peace that Bitcoin does for the long run. And when you layer on top of Bitcoin again and you build from such a solid foundation, I think as Lightning spreads, it's going to create not only more access points for people to use Bitcoin as a medium of
Mm.
exchange, because it has this like instant user experience. You have sub-second confirmation. You have tiny fees compared to the base layer. Think of the world of AI, right? We're going to need more micropayments. We're going to need machine to machine payments. And this is global. This is peer to peer. This is 24/7. This is across borders. I mean, that's what eventually scales Bitcoin, keeping the base layer unclogged. And really it's the only one that I would trust personally. And so as for the competition, it'll be interesting for sure to see how it plays out, but there's nothing I would put my trust in except for Bitcoin.
Yeah, two things come to mind. That GIF of like which chains last, and they're all moving up and down, and
Yeah.
Bitcoin's just like not moving. And yeah, there is
Yeah.
no second best. How can we move on without making that one quote?
Exactly.
All right. So corporate Bitcoin treasuries, clearly there's been a parabolic rise of these, but they're gonna maybe put that capital to work. Is it working capital? Is it gonna stay just purely treasury and cold storage? Maybe share what the future might look like with these Bitcoin treasuries, how they'll be used, what they're gonna be leveraged
Well,
for in the future.
it is a fascinating trend. It is highly volatile right now. I'm not sure if you guys are following the market, but I mean, it's been wild to see them kind of shoot out like a rocket ship, and now they're facing some headwinds as people kind of question the strat. I mean, it's just been fascinating, and I agree with the mantra and the saying that volatility is ultimately a feature, not a bug. It's the vitality, and you need sort of the pullbacks before you can shoot back up. But these companies are they're doing what's logical, right? They're looking at their balance sheets, many of which are bleeding out because of the inflation rate and the hurdle rate, which before Bitcoin was really like the S&P 500. And they're saying, what can I actually buy? Because if I capitalize my company on something like treasury bonds, then I'm losing in real terms because they keep printing and debasing the currency, and they're running these massive fiscal deficits. I mean, we are in a fiscal crisis, and a lot of people I think are not really coming to terms with that yet when you think about TradFi. So what does a company capitalize on? And it can't capitalize on securities. It can't like purchase the Mag 7 and call it a day. Bitcoin is a commodity. A company can capitalize on a commodity. And so you're seeing companies that some of them are starting small, some of them are starting with a massive big splash, like these some of these recent Bitcoin treasury companies where they're ready to purchase hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin. But what's interesting is a lot of them are pledging already, like, I'm not willing to sell this. Like once I get it, I am not going to sell. And I think that this trend, it was ushered in not just by a friendly regulatory environment and a friendly administration, but also just like these steps that we've seen over the past few years, like the spot Bitcoin ETFs being approved. We now have new accounting rules that allow for fair value and mark to market accounting. So a lot of these like incremental steps have led to more institutional adoption and corporations actually saying, either I'm struggling and I like zombie companies are really adopting this quickly because they need something that's going to give them a little bit of a spark, but also there are a lot of companies that have just been stagnant, and they're looking at things like, should I do a merger and acquisition? Should I buy back my own stock? Should I just sit on treasuries? None of these strategies are working. Oh, there's Bitcoin, which is going up 50% ARR every single year, right? So I just think it's interesting. Like, we'll see more and more companies go in this direction, and it's not difficult. Like, you can start small. You can, hopefully, if you bring it to your board and the board is open-minded to this type of thing, that they'll allow you to move in this direction. And I am proud to serve on the board of Semler Scientific, which was a medical technology company, still is, with a very like reliable cash flow and a solid medical business and solid medical products that prevent early like chronic diseases. Like we have a product called the QuantaFlow, which identifies what's called the silent killer, which is peripheral arterial disease. And that is something that is needed by so many people around the country that face just heart failure, these chronic conditions because we've become so unhealthy. And now this company that has this great medical business is pivoting to a Bitcoin treasury strategy. And Eric Semler, the executive chairman, wants to be a Bitcoin powerhouse, came out of the gate as the second company after MicroStrategy to adopt it, and now is the fifth largest treasury as far as public companies go in the US. So it's really exciting to see what kind of companies are adopting this kind of strategy. And I think we're going to see a lot more, even though the market is a little bit volatile right now.
Awesome. So, we've covered a lot on the treasury side, the capability of Lightning, and the fact that we have, clarity in America, which is wonderful. So, innovators and entrepreneurs can move forward. If you were just talking one-on-one candidly as we wrap up with an executive who is just weighing maybe not the store value and balance sheet, they're not a financier, they don't know how to do like the bond market and all these elaborate things, but they're trying to understand how can Bitcoin impact my business? How can I add value to my business, better serve my employees, better serve my customers? How would you just earnestly explain that to them? What would you say?
Well, you hit on a key word, and that is value. I think that there is no other asset that exists that encourages and incentivizes more value creation than Bitcoin. Something I've been thinking about lately is just how pretty much everything around us is designed to take our money from us, right? Like strip us of value in some way, extract value from us everywhere. Every business you turn to, everywhere. Bitcoin is the one thing that no matter who adopts it, it benefits you tremendously. It benefits your business tremendously. It benefits your customers tremendously. It creates a lot of value. It allows you to store value for the future. It allows you to restore and maintain your purchasing power. And it allows you to create products that people can use globally that allow them to also be able to save for the future and maybe think about money in a different way and use money in a way that has less friction and less middlemen and less gatekeepers and fewer fees and all of that. So I think that ultimately Bitcoin is the ultimate value creator. And if we build our economy and we build all of our businesses on top of a base layer and a bedrock that is sound and immune to manipulation and immune to the debasement that destroys our purchasing power, then that again incentivizes all of us to create things that actually spread value, right? And allow us to take more risks and allow us to not be so worried that the capital that we are working with is about to be diluted and destroyed. And so I think that Bitcoin is the one thing that every single business needs, every individual, every family, and you work your way up as, companies get bigger all the way to even governments. It's the one thing that I think benefits all of us. And I wish we had more of it because today, fiat, if you look around, like fiat has really just destroyed the quality of everything. And it's not about providing value. It's why I think that capitalism is so skewed in so many people's minds because we've never had real capitalism. We've never had capitalism based on capital that can't be manipulated and destroyed essentially at the root and corrupted by a set of people that we didn't even elect, right? I mean, what we have today is crony capitalism, and crony capitalism benefits the people closest to the money printer and the people closest to those in power and the issuers of the currency at the expense of everyone else. So it's kind of understandable why everyone has said, like, ugh, screw capitalism. This doesn't serve me, but it would serve you if that capital was sound money, was hard money like Bitcoin. And so I think that if we lived in capitalism, capitalism is about providing value. And that's how you get paid. That's how you make a profit, is you provide a good or service that creates value. And today we have that totally skewed. And the incentives again they benefit the large, the wealthy, the well-connected, the corrupt at the expense of all the people that are working so hard. So I know it's a bit of like it's a bit of rose-colored glasses to think that Bitcoin can just fix everything, and I know it will take a long time and it won't happen overnight, but what else if not Bitcoin? I mean, if there was no Bitcoin, I would not see hope in the future and us actually coming together and creating more value for one another. I would feel as hopeless as so many people do, especially young people. But because of Bitcoin, I actually feel hope that we can get there. We can come together, build something really fair and accessible to everybody that creates opportunity around the world. And that's why, like, I have such hope for Bitcoin because even though adoption might seem small and steady and very gradual, I think eventually the whole world will be on board and we'll see much, much more amazing things than we've had in the last 100 years because people will be able to save for the future.
That's great. I think you did some wonderful storytelling and education there and some practical ways in which someone could use it. But, thank you for joining us today, spending 30 minutes with us. We'll do it again sometime, but if you want to maybe share anything just at the end where folks could connect with you, maybe learn more. I think they'd get value from, just taking in more knowledge and, growing with their Bitcoin journey.
Yeah, I mean, I love just focusing on the fundamentals. There are so many people we need an orange pill. So I'm coming out with my first book. It's like a very approachable 101 introduction to Bitcoin and the problem that it solves. It's called Bitcoin is for Everyone, and that's coming out this fall. You can pre-order it wherever you get your books. It's again Bitcoin for Everyone. And yeah, just my show. I'm so grateful to be on my fourth year doing the podcast and getting to serve on the board of Semler and seeing where this corporate treasury Bitcoin trend goes. And just very grateful to be a speaker. Thanks for having me.